The question that broke Trump: how one congresswoman shattered a president's composure on live TV. Picture this. It's a Monday morning in late September, and the entire nation is watching. Room 2141 of the Raber House office building is packed with cameras, journalists, and tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. The President of the United States is about to testify about his most controversial executive order yet, one targeting sanctuary cities and birthright protections. But what nobody expected was that a single question from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett will completely unravel the most powerful man in America live on national television. The calm before the storm. Trump walked into that hearing thinking it would be routine. He was 10 minutes late, surrounded by Secret Service and nervous advisors. He wore his usual Navy suit and red tie, but if you look closely, you could see the signs: the slight puff under his eyes, the clenched jaw, the rushed movements. Something was already off. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett sat at the end of the committee row in a burnt orange blazer, a pen resting against her chin. She didn't look nervous. She looked patient, like someone who already knew what was coming and was simply waiting for her moment. The first round of questions was typical political theater. Trump deflected, redirected, and threw out his usual sound bites. But then they called on Representative Crockett, and everything changed. The first strike. "Mr. President," she began, adjusting her microphone slowly, "you've insisted that this executive order is about security. But security for who?" Trump raised an eyebrow. "For the American people, all of them." She tilted her head slightly. "And yet, your order disproportionately affects immigrants from communities that already contribute significantly to this country's economy, infrastructure, and culture. Isn't it true, sir, that your own Department of Justice warned against a language in Section 12 for its constitutional vulnerabilities?" Trump leaned forward, smirking. "You know, I expected better. This is the same recycled nonsense the fake media tries every day. I don't answer to opinions, Congresswoman. I answer to results." There was a pause, just a breath, but it was enough for everyone in the room to feel that something had shifted. Crockett didn't flinch. She let the silence hang for a beat too long, just long enough to make him uncomfortable. "With all due respect, sir," she said calmly, "results don't come at the expense of the truth." Going for the jugular. But Crockett wasn't just here to debate policy. She was about to press where it really hurt. "Mr. President," she continued, her voice crisp but composed, "you've talked about transparency. You've campaigned on being a straight shooter. So I think it's fair to ask you to clarify some things for the American public. Things that seem to contradict the very image you try to uphold." Trump glanced at his legal counsel, suddenly paying attention. Crockett tapped a manila folder. "I have here a set of internal emails, not from reporters, not from opponents, but from within your own team. Emails discussing the First Lady's prolonged stay in West Palm Beach, separate residences, private travel arrangements. Secret Service logs showing that Mrs. Trump has spent less than 20 days total at the White House in the last 3 months." Trump leaned back and scoffed. "So now we're talking about my marriage? This is Congress or Real Housewives of Washington. What a joke." But Crockett didn't let it go. "The American public deserves to know whether the image you sell is real or whether we're watching a stage show held together by scripted appearances and a press team cleaning up behind you." The room was getting quieter. Even the journalists were whispering now. "You present your policies as reflections of your core beliefs," Crockett continued, steady as a metronome. "But if that core is fractured behind the scenes, if your own household is a staged illusion, then how can we trust the way you govern?" That got a reaction. Trump sat up. "That's none of your damn business." "You made it our business," Crockett shot back, "when you campaigned on family values, when you held up your marriage as proof of your strength. You opened that door, Mr. President." The breaking point. Trump leaned toward the microphone, his voice sharp. "You don't know anything about my marriage." Crockett's response was devastating. "I know what your staff is saying behind your back." That did it. Trump slammed his palm on the table. A sharp, flat pop that echoed through the room. "You're disgusting," he shouted. "This isn't what America wants. You want to talk about loyalty? Integrity? Look in the mirror." Crockett didn't even blink. "Integrity is exactly what I'm talking about. The pause that followed was long enough for people to realize something rare had happened. Trump had lost his cool, and she hadn't raised her voice once. The final blow. "I'm not finished," Crockett said calmly, flipping another page. "Because this isn't just about where the First Lady sleeps. It's about the patterns of secrecy and the lengths your administration has gone to keep the American people in the dark." She turned another page. "In testimony earlier this year, one of your former aides mentioned your increasing reliance on a small inner circle. Aide said the president had become irritable, erratic, and paranoid. That same aide also claimed you were refusing routine health checks." "False. Lies. All of it." Trump snapped. "Then maybe you can explain," Crockett said, her voice cutting now, "why 3 separate White House aides confirmed that you required private, on-call medical attendance during international trips, something no previous president has demanded so consistently, and that those same aides, off the record, have described the presence of personal garments, not for fashion, but for function." The air snapped. Somewhere a cameraman gasped. A journalist whispered, "Oh my God!" Trump's mouth moved, but nothing came out at first. His face was flushed. "This is shameful," he finally barked. "You're out of line." "You're the president," Crockett replied, eyes locked on his. "Every line affects 330 million people. You don't get to hide behind a desk anymore." The meltdown. What happened next was unprecedented. Trump, who had weathered dozens of heated hearings, was visibly shaken. His hands twitched, his lips pressed into a flat line. Crockett pressed on, her voice steady. "I'm not here to mock you, Mr. President, but when your administration demands total trust from the American people while hiding fractures, that becomes everyone's business." Trump leaned forward, gripping the table edge. "No one wants to hear this. This is trash." "People don't trust you," Crockett replied, direct and sharp. "They've been asked to believe one thing while watching something very different." She glanced at her folder. "In April, your team delayed a scheduled summit in Brussels. The official statement blamed security logistics, but emails show internal memos citing an unplanned medical delay. The term used, quote, presidential garment concerns. I'd like clarification on what that means." Trump stared at her, not blinking, not speaking. "Do you deny that medical staff traveling with you were instructed to remain on standby overnight due to an incident on Air Force One?" Still no response, because 2 former stewards on that flight gave statements. They said medical staff were summoned after an unspecified accident occurred during your return from Brussels. The color in Trump's face deepened, not red like anger, but blotched, uneven. "I'm not going to sit here and entertain sick lies from sick people," he said finally, voice raw. "You're a fraud. You were sent here to embarrass the presidency." Crockett's response was perfect. "No, Mr. President. I was elected to protect it." Complete breakdown. What followed was chaos. Trump's voice cracked when he called her disgusting and an angry little woman. When Crockett calmly noted his misogynistic language for the record, he completely lost control. He stood up, his chair screeching backward. "You know what? Screw this hearing. It's a joke. This whole process is a joke." His legal team flinched. Secret Service agents moved closer. "I'm not letting them do this," Trump continued. "I built this country back, and now I'm being ambushed with personal garbage on live TV with diapers." Really, the word hit like a dropped microphone. Even his allies froze. Trump looked directly at Crockett. "You should be ashamed. Attacking a man's family, his dignity. There's no coming back from that." Crockett's final response was delivered quietly, almost too quiet for the microphone. "You can't lose what you gave away yourself." The room stopped. Complete silence. Trump stood there for 3 seconds, then realizing the cameras were catching every twitch, every shake, he sat back down, not because he wanted to, but because walking out would have looked even worse. The aftermath. Within minutes, clips were surfacing online. Hashtag Crockett claps back was trending worldwide. Cable news broke from regular programming. TikTok exploded with reactions and memes. But it wasn't just viral content. It was a moment that changed everything. Parents watched with their kids. Teachers brought it up in class. People who'd never heard of Jasmine Crockett were suddenly paying attention. Her office received thousands of calls, mostly messages of thanks from veterans, nurses, retirees, college students, people who'd never seen a confrontation like that. Not without shouting or chaos, just facts and control. Trump, predictably, took to Truth Social just after midnight, calling Crockett a disgrace and a horrible, nasty person. But something had changed. The replies were filled with quotes from a hearing, users comparing Crockett's restraint to his eruption. The contrast was undeniable. The bigger picture. A week later, Republicans tried to censure Crockett for demeaning the dignity of the presidency. The vote failed 214 to 216. Even some moderate Republicans voted against it, saying they respected that she spoke truth without shouting. Crockett didn't celebrate. She just kept working, kept speaking at town halls, kept reminding people that pressure only cracks what's hollow. At the Kennedy Presidential Library, she delivered a speech that captured the moment perfectly. Accountability is not an attack. Transparency is not cruelty. Asking questions of the most powerful man in the country doesn't make you disrespectful. It makes you responsible. The legacy. 2 weeks after the hearing, in a quiet radio interview in Dayton, Ohio, Crockett reflected on what had happened. "I don't feel pressure to be a symbol," she said. "I feel responsibility to stay human." She talked about an email from a woman who said she'd never spoken up at work when her boss crossed a line, but after watching Crockett not back down, she'd found her voice. "That's what stays with me," Crockett said. Not the noise, not the spin, the one person who saw something in herself that she hadn't seen before. The real message. If there's anything to take from Jasmine Crockett's confrontation with the president, it's this: decency isn't weakness, clarity isn't cruelty, and calm truth can shake the room louder than any shout. Her legacy isn't the viral clip or the political fallout. It's a quiet courage that reminded people watching at home that truth doesn't have a shout to be heard, that strength isn't the slam of a hand or the raise of a voice, but in the stillness that stands its ground while power stumbles. Now, more than ever, our country needs that kind of courage, not just in Congress, but everywhere, in classrooms, boardrooms, living rooms. It needs people willing to speak up even if their voice shakes, even if they're the only one, even if it's uncomfortable, because silence doesn't fix anything, but speaking up might.